Yes, my name is Regína Jensdóttir, and my role in the Council of Europe is to make sure that everyone in this organization works on children's rights. It's a very challenging task because this is a very big organization which works in many different areas. As you have probably heard throughout today, the Council of Europe is an organization which has been put in place following the Second World War. We have 47 member states today, and our values and our objectives are built on human rights, on democracy, and on the rule of law. And believe it or not, children's rights are relevant to every single one of these three pillars. So the Council of Europe has, for a number of years, created a more strategic focus on how we can, as an organization, promote children's rights as real human rights. Our former Deputy Secretary General, Maudebor Bukikyo, who was in the forefront of creating the children's rights agenda in the Council of Europe, she often referred to our work and often spoke about children having real rights, that they were not meany human beings with meany human rights. And that is absolutely true. And I think that what was said here before, changing cultures, changing mentalities, that is something that we strive, and that is something that we always try to do, to get politicians, to get decision makers to understand that children are human beings with real human rights. And this requires us to change mentalities and to change a way of thinking. We have, in our work in the Council of Europe, we have since 2005, since the Warsaw Summit, we have steadily built a very solid agenda through strategies that the organization has adopted, which is based on, or where we have put forward the key tools that we have in the Council of Europe. That is, of course, legal standards. All of our work is based on or derives from the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The UN Convention is obviously a global convention. So what we have done through the past years is we have adopted conventions which are binding, which states need to sign and ratify, but we've also adopted recommendations where all of the 47 member states adopt a recommendation on different areas where we have worked on child-friendly justice, child-friendly health services, a recommendation for positive parenting, to be able to support states in introducing a legal ban on corporal punishment, for example. It is not enough to ban something. You need to be able to accompany the countries and to accompany them in order to be able to help the parents and the families to bring their children up in a positive, empowering way. But our key legal standards are, of course, based on the UNCRC and clearly also the European Convention of Human Rights, which is our key legal instrument. What we also do, the other tool, the second tool that we use, are the Council of Europe monitoring bodies, because many of our legal standards, they are accompanied by a monitoring body which evaluates how the states are performing and how the states are really implementing the legal standards that have been adopted by the Council of Europe. A previous speaker just said, law is not enough. It's true, it is not enough. You need to accompany the states, you need to raise awareness, you need to build the capacities of the countries to change legislation, to train, and to be able to have public services or judges that know what the rights are. So we work in hand with the countries in assisting them really in developing the policies so that the 150 million children that live in the Council of Europe member states are really benefiting from the rights that are enshrined in the European Convention of Human Rights or in the other legal instruments that the Council of Europe has adopted in favor of children's rights. We also provide assistance to states, so that we are now in the phase in the Council of Europe where we are working in specific countries that have requested support from us in changing their legislation. We are doing this in Ukraine, in Moldova, in many different countries that request our support. The Children's Rights Program has done a lot of awareness raising and build capacity building together with our countries. In order to do this, we develop materials, booklets and leaflets, which help the professionals that have to work with children on helping them to better understand the rights of children. I have laid out a number of our publications for you to take if it is of interest to you from different sectors. Today we are working on a strategy, the Council of Europe Strategy for the Rights of the Child, which is from 2012 to 2015. So we are now halfway through the implementation of the existing strategy that we have. There are 4 key pillars in this strategy: promoting child-friendly services and child-friendly systems. We have guidelines for health professionals, for social services professionals, for the judiciary on how children's rights can be better protected. In this under this particular strategic objective, we are always looking at the voice of the child, to put the child into the center of the procedure so that professionals know exactly how to listen to the voice of the child and how to understand and how to be able to take into account the child's views when a decision has to be taken for that child. Another important pillar in our strategy is the second one, fighting violence against children. Here we are looking at sexual violence in particular, which is one of our priority actions and which I will come back to a little bit later on, and violence in schools, violence in the home. And I think that this is an area where we have really been the hub for example, Marta Santos Pais, who is the special representative of the UN Secretary General on Violence Against Children. We have developed legal standards which support our countries in working in a multidisciplinary way. So we have integrated strategies which explain and which support. They are very practical. So it means that we encourage our states to put in place commissions where the Ministry of Health is working with the Ministry of Social Affairs, Justice, the Ombudsperson of Children's Rights, and also with civil society organization. That is really the message in the work that we are doing on violence against children, is that you cannot look at children's rights through just one lens. You need to be sure that all of the public services and the ministries are working together in order to have an action plan and in order to have integrated strategies to tackle violence against children. When we do this, we also, through our work, we exchange good practice. This means that we bring together the stakeholders, we bring together the states, and we try to see what is working well. And we try to see what is not working so well, because I don't think it is time, we don't have time to spend our efforts and our funding in these times of austerity on really wasting our resources. That is really the added value of the Council of Europe, is that we have the opportunity of exchanging this practice. We also focus on promoting the rights of children in vulnerable situations, children that are unaccompanied, migrant children, children that are Roma, children that have disabilities, children that are in detention, and I will come back to that a little bit later on. And the 4th strategic objective is child participation. That is an area where we have, as I earlier mentioned, where we have really developed a specific recommendation for our member states, and we have just published 2 weeks ago an assessment tool where states can really look at themselves. It's like an auto-evaluation where they can, together with civil society, between the ministries, they can look at and see how child participation is integrated into decision-making. And this is very tricky because we've seen in Europe, in our Council of Europe member states, we have seen an enormous amount of projects that are being developed where children's voices are heard, but these are all very staccato, and they're all projects which have a beginning and have an end. It's very good, it's a start, but I think really that the next phase is that decision makers understand the value of children's views. Their experience counts. And sometimes there are even more experts than we are as adults. And I think this is important for us to understand. And I think this is where strong politicians can come in and to show and to illustrate really how important it is to listen also to children's views when a decision concerns them. I mentioned earlier the integrated strategies. I think this is really where the Council of Europe work has been built on for the past years. We are changing the mentalities to create a culture of children's rights. The previous speakers mentioned the culture of human rights. I speak of the culture of children's rights. The culture of cooperation, where we are exchanging our practices and where the ministries and the stakeholders at national level work together hand in hand. One example of where there is a serious need to work on this cooperation is internet and children, how they are using the internet. You cannot do it only from the Ministries of Education perspective. You also need to do it from the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social Affairs and Information Technology and Communication. All of these ministries need to have a strategy together. It is not possible to work in isolation on this particular issue. We promote through these integrated strategies, we promote that there is a framework, an overall framework where we have legislation and policies that are going into the same direction. This also encourages member states to conduct research, to collect data, because there's always a need for more data to understand the problem or the challenge that we have. And of course, to promote child-friendly services and mechanisms. These guidelines, this recommendation was adopted in 2008. And following this recommendation, we had 3 different specialized committees in the Council of Europe that worked on children's rights, on health, on justice, and on social services. So this was, the integrated strategies are really the cradle of the work which we did then in 2010, 11, and 12. Our approach regarding justice, children and justice, it is a very challenging area, and it is an area where a lot of work has been done in the past, but all has been brought together in a package in the Council of Europe strategy for the rights of the child. So the key legal instruments, of course, is the European Convention of Human Rights, and here we have put a lot of efforts into looking at the situation of children and young people in detention. For the Council of Europe, children should not be detained. They should not be behind bars. They should not be in prison. It is not a place for children. This is easier said than done because we have different member states where the education systems are different and the criminal law systems are different, and the views of people are different. Because in some cases, of course, children under the age of 18 commit very serious crimes. But we still believe that children should not be behind bars. They should be helped, they should be supported. We have, you have the list of the many recommendations that have been adopted by the Council of Europe in this area. And you have to understand that behind each instrument, there are cooperation activities, there are committees which meet to try to develop further the standards and the rules and to exchange good practice. I think that the most recent legal instrument that we have are the guidelines on child-friendly justice, which have really changed the way in which our member states are looking at the justice system. These are guidelines which encourage our countries to look at the administrative justice system, because children that are in migration or unaccompanied, they are put into administrative detention. It looks at the criminal justice system, it looks at the civil justice system, and in these situations, children are, the parents of children are divorcing, their names are changed, their nationalities are changed, and children should, in all circumstances, be, their views should be taken into account. In criminal justice, this has been, the child-friendly justice concept and the child-friendly justice message has been very, very clear, because in this area, we are promoting that, for example, children that are victims, that they are given specific attention so that they do not have to repeat on many instances the trauma that they have suffered. This can be, for example, when they have been sexually abused, or where they have been raped, or where they have been trafficked. It is unacceptable that children have to repeat the rape to 10 different people. And that is actually the reality of what happens in our member states. When a child has been raped, it has to explain the story to the first person that the child confides to, the psychologist, the police officer, the lawyer, the judge. And sometimes they have to explain this many times. And today, with the technology that we have, today, with the facilities we should have to be able to cooperate, this should not happen. We have examples in our member states where children that are victims of sexual violence are taken to one special house, or they use, in some countries they use what they call green rooms, in some countries they use children's houses, and this is an area where all of the professionals come together to take the testimony of the child, where the child is examined through forensic interviewing. So this is really the message in the criminal part of the guidelines on child-friendly justice that we're trying to convey. And I really think we are making progress, because we see that there's an interest in the member states of the Council of Europe to put these structures into place. And it is very, very important. So through our work, we try to involve, of course, the different stakeholders. So we are trying to analyze the trends. We address new issues, and we have now, 2 weeks ago, we adopted a new report through the Council of Europe Venice Commission, which is a commission which looks at constitutional legislation. You might not initially think that children's rights is something that concerns constitution, but of course, why should it not concern constitutional legislation as well? So the Venice Commission has published its report 2 weeks ago, which looks at how children's rights are reflected in constitutions. Is it child participation? Is it the best interest of the child? And it is a very interesting study which concludes with a few recommendations which are important for us to continue to progress with the children's rights agenda in the Council of Europe member states. First, of course, to make sure that all member states have independent human rights institutions which can review and which can support the member states when they feel like children's rights are not being respected, what we usually call the ombudspersons of children's rights. We also work with the Consultative Council of Magistrates and Prosecutors. These are bodies where we have one representative per country, where we explain and we try to train through these networks the professionals that work in the member states, so that they understand the guidelines and they understand the different legal instruments that are applicable in the member states as well. We work with through the conference of specialized ministers. Those can be the conferences where we have ministers of justice. When the Council of Europe guidelines on child-friendly justice, for example, when they were adopted, it was adopted following a conference of ministers of justice, which met and decided that they wanted to take action to improve the situation of children that have to go through the justice system because they had committed a crime or because they were victims. And then, of course, we work very closely with ombudspersons networks, the Council of the European Network of Ombudspersons, and we work very closely with ombudspersons in the member states. And we try to take the temperature to see really what is going on in the member states as well. So that information is brought up to us not just through the member states, but also through the ombudspersons. 2 weeks ago, there was a conference which was organized in Dubrovnik, where we brought together a large part of the children's rights community in Europe. And one of the issues that was brought forward to the conference was that there was what is the contemporary risk in the area of children's rights? And one of them, of course, is the hypersexualization of our societies. And we want to look at to see what is the impact that this is having on children and on their rights. So this is something where I would like to work, the Council of Europe, to focus on, to see really what is going on. We are seeing children that are displayed in media and advertisement. We're using children in television shows where they have temper tantrums and where they are crying and where they are sitting on toilets. And I think we need to look at this with a critical eye. Is this something that are we violating the right of this child? Even if there's parental consent. We see that children, they have access to pornography very easily through the internet, through their telephones. What is this impact? How can we accompany children to grow up as responsible adults? How are we managing to help our countries to put in place policies which will avoid children being traumatized by the images that they see on television or on the internet? I think this is something which we need to look at. I don't have the solution. I don't know. Maybe some of our member states do. But I think that this is a concern, and this is something that we really need to look at very carefully. We're also been working very closely with the committee, the Council of Europe Committee for the Prevention of Torture, which is one of the most prestigious bodies in the Council of Europe, a monitoring body. This committee looks also at how the Council of Europe guidelines on child-friendly justice, our recommendations on children that are detained. They look at it and they try to see how the countries are implementing this legislation. The CPT, that's the abbreviation for this committee, they go into member states and they go into detention center. They look at where prisoners are detained, but they have now, thanks to the efforts of the children's program and our mainstreaming action and my constant harassment on everyone else in this organization to work on children's rights, they have gone into the area, into detention centers where children are detained. And I really think we need a special focus on these centers, because you cannot interview a child in the same way as you interview an adult. You need to listen differently. So we have also been making efforts to provide training to the members of the CPT. People are different, and some are more talented in communicating and speaking to children. So it is important. We started by training the members of the Committee for the Prevention of Torture. We also work with the Commission for the Efficiency of Justice, which is a commission of the Council of Europe, which really looks at how the justice system is functioning in our member states. We work with the Conference of Directors of Prisons, etc. So what we have really tried as an organization is to create synergies and to communicate on children's rights. This is consolidating the progress that we have achieved, and we are trying to better resist to the attempts and the questions and question the values and principles which are going to help us to keep making progress and to tackle the new challenges that we have to face, or that children actually have to face. I've covered a lot of ground. I don't want to speak for too long. I don't know for how much more time I have, but I really cannot leave without speaking about the action of the Council of Europe in fighting sexual violence against children. I briefly mentioned the children's houses, but I think it is important because I know that you come from different countries, different continents, and I want to share with you the possibilities that your countries may have in joining the action of the Council of Europe to stop sexual violence against children. We have a Council of Europe convention, the Lanzarote Convention, which is a unique convention because it focuses not only on sexual exploitation, but it also focuses on sexual abuse. It is the first legal instrument in Europe that tackles sexual abuse. And I think that it is very challenging for everyone to understand that about 20% of children are victims of some form of sexual violence during their childhood, from the day they're born until they're 18. With the internet and the access to pornography that children have, I think that this is having an impact also on young perpetrators, which is a very serious concern. But this convention, it is about prevention. It establishes that persons that are working in contact with children, they should be screened and they should be trained. It stipulates also that children should be made aware of the risks of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse and how to protect themselves. This may sound to be very easy, but it is very, very challenging for us to explain to parents and to explain to those that take care of children that we have to break the taboo, that they have to understand, to speak to a parent that or to explain to a parent that we have to speak about sexual abuse and the risks. It's not as easy as it may seem, because we have different religious and cultural backgrounds. But this is really the essence of the Council of Europe work in this area. The convention also provides or establishes that intervention measures for the offenders and the potential offenders aimed at preventing sexual offenses against children should be regularly monitored. We have noted that there are systems in our member states where a man or a woman can call a helpline if they think that they might offend a child, or they might have tendencies to offend a child, so they can seek help. This is very new in our countries, and I think this is really an excellent initiative, because if people feel like they need help to avoid this, that's very good, but that's just one example of how we are exchanging practice. The convention also speaks about protection. Of course, I mentioned earlier the children's houses or the green rooms that are being put in place. So it advocates for programs to support victims and their families be set up, therapeutic assistance, reporting, obligatory reporting of sexual violence. In many of our member states, doctors are not obliged to report a suspicion of sexual violence. This is, for me, unbelievable, that if a doctor realizes that a child has been sexually abused, that there's not an obligation to report. And this is something that we are changing with the Lanzarote Convention. The third P, it's prevention, protection, and prosecution. This convention defines certain types of criminal offenses: sexual abuse, sexual prostitution, child pornography, corruption of children, and now also the solicitation of children for sexual purposes, including grooming, internet grooming, which is becoming more and more frequent. And this convention helps us to establish really common criteria on how to be effective, how to be proportionate and have a dissuasive punitive system, which is put in place in all countries. Now, the added value of this convention is also that what we call the extraterritoriality principle, or the rule. It means that a citizen of a country that has, let's take Iceland as an example, because Iceland is a state party to this convention. If an Icelandic national commits a crime which is criminalized in this convention in a third country outside of Europe, this citizen can be prosecuted for that crime in Iceland. And this is very, very important in this convention. And this is important also because the convention is open to non-member states of the Council of Europe. It means that countries in other continents are able to accede to this convention, which is very important in order for us to be able to put in place real cooperation in order to tackle sexual violence against children. We have a campaign, the Council of Europe 1 in 5 campaign, which has been running now since 2010. This campaign promoted the signature and ratification of the convention, and I'm very happy that now we have the 30th country which is party, Switzerland. So the Lanzarote family is getting bigger and bigger, and this is very important because 3 times a year we have state representatives that travel to Strasbourg, and we are looking at how the convention is being implemented, what are the challenges and what are the difficulties. We met last week here, and the committee is looking at, its first monitoring round is looking at sexual abuse in the circle of trust. So we're going to really look at to see what kind of legislation the countries have put in place, what kind of support mechanisms have been put in place. And I think this is a very innovative and a very new approach to tackling sexual violence against children. And I hope that we will be able to deliver our first results in next year. We also have the campaign is also helping us to raise awareness in Council of Europe member states. Fiona mentioned earlier that legislation is not enough. we realized that in the 1 in 5 campaign that it was not enough just to have a convention. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has a network of parliamentarians. I think there are 51 representatives of 51 parliaments that are taking part in this network. They work here in Strasbourg. They look at all the different issues that are covered by the convention to generate dialogue and an understanding. They speak about the Lanzarote Convention in their national parliaments. They are taking action at home to make sure that the Lanzarote Convention is ratified, and this is very, very important. We also work with the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe. We have a pact, and there are cities in all over Europe that are adhering to this pact, which is going to allow them to exchange practice on how local authorities are preventing and protecting children from sexual violence, which is very important. And of course, we have campaigns that are running in about 20 countries, or more than 20 countries now. And I think this is an area where the Council of Europe started working over 10 years ago, and I can feel that if you open any newspaper or internet newspaper, we are speaking in a much easier way about sexual violence against children. We are reporting and we are understanding that this is not something that is possible just to let it to quiet it down. I think that adults today that are victims of sexual violence did not feel at ease to report it when they were children, but I am convinced that today's children are much more at ease to speak up when they have been subject to sexual violence. I hope I was not too long. I tried to give you as much information as possible. I'm sorry if it was a little bit longer, but thank you, and I will of course answer any questions after. Thank you very much.